All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of Mile High on Broad. Tonight, we're going to be breaking down some great games from the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Then we're going to go ahead and talk about what's coming up in this conference matchups. We got some exciting games this weekend. We had definitely some good games this past weekend. We're getting ready to see who's going to play in for the Super Bowl. So starting out, let's go ahead and jump into these games. And hey, how you doing, Mike?
No, I am good. I'm good. I am probably the happiest man in America to have been wrong about something last week. I know I publicly made it known that I was picking against my Eagles last week, and I was hoping that I was wrong. And the curse slash blessing of me being afraid of the Eagles losing continues. Every time I'm nervous, they win. So, I mean, I guess all I have to do is just be nervous for these next couple of weeks, and we're good to go.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that game in a little bit more detail. You know, we were 4-2 the first week. We agreed on every game. This week, big 4-0 for me, 3-1 for you, obviously because you didn't pick your Eagles. So I had a good weekend too. Put some money down on that 4-game parlay. Got them all
All
right.
that.
So I'm feeling pretty good going into this weekend. Um, let's start out with this Jags and Chiefs game. Um, I want to hear kind of your impressions of the game and how it went. Obviously the big news, and for me, really the only storyline that I paid a lot of attention to in this game was Patrick Mahomes having his ankle rolled up on in that second quarter, and you could tell he was in a lot of pain. Obviously having to pull him out at one point. He missed most of that second quarter. We all know what happened. He went into that locker room. They wrapped that ankle up super tight so it didn't move, and they shot him full of a bunch of stuff so he couldn't feel a thing. And they put him back out there, but you could even tell in that second half he wasn't moving very well. And high ankle sprain. They're saying he's playing, which I mean it's a conference game, so he's going to have to play this coming week. But you could definitely tell in that game it definitely had an impact. Jags 20, Chiefs 27. They still get the win. Mike, how did you see this game going down?
Yeah, so I thought it was a much more competitive game than I anticipated it being, but I don't know how much of that comes down to the Mahomes injury, honestly. So, if he plays the whole game, maybe it's a little bit more of a blowout, maybe it's not. But either way, props to the Jags, props to Dougie P for making the game at least close and competitive on the scoreline at the end of the day. Also, one of the other big storylines that I want to give a big shout out to is Chad Henne and Andy Reid. It takes a lot of gall when your backup quarterback comes in and the first play of that drive is on the 2 yard line. That means that after your first drop back, because the first play of that drive was a pass play, Chad Henne's in his own end zone and he's in a playoff game. I don't think he's ever played a playoff game before. I know he certainly hadn't thrown a touchdown pass in a playoff game. So the first play of the game, shout out to Andy Reid for making the Jaguars realize, like, hey, we don't know if Mahomes is coming back, and they're not playing it safe. These guys are dropping back. They're attempting to pass the ball. So we actually have to play defense right now. We can't just rely on trying to stuff the run. And so I think that gave Chad Henne the confidence. I think that gave the rest of the Chiefs offense the confidence in Chad Henne to be able to go down and drive the ball down 98 yards, which is a postseason record for the Chiefs, 98 yards for the touchdown. And so that was super impressive. But my other takeaway from this was
Before you jump into
I'm
that
sure.
second take, I want to touch on that because I think that's a good point with Henne and that drive and coming out passing because a lot of times a backup quarterback you're going to protect them, right? You're going to run the
Yes.
ball and they came out swinging, 98-yard drive, but they basically said, hey, look, like we're not going to lay down and die. We're not going to change our game plan, and we're still going to come to play. And Henne's been with the Chiefs for a long time. He's been around that team for a long time. He is a seasoned pro. He's the definition of a great
Knows the
backup,
system,
and
he knows the players. Yeah.
there's a lot of trust there. And he's definitely a guy who, he can come in and pick that up. He did it, the other year when Mahomes was hurt and missed a few games. So I mean, we know he can do it. In the short term when he's there, but I think like you said, you set that tone with that first play. This is a pass. I'm not laying down. I'm not going to run the ball. You better play real defense and not just crowd this line because otherwise we're going to come get you. So, yeah, I was definitely impressed by that decision to just say, hey, come and get us. We're not slowing down.
Yeah, definitely. And the other takeaway I had, you might not like this one as much, is I still don't know what to make of Trevor Lawrence, man. Like, I don't know what to make of him. Like everybody coming out of college, myself included, thought that this guy was going to be a generational talent. He was supposed to be as good as Andrew Luck. He was supposed to be the next Peyton Manning. He's supposed to be a future top 5, top 10 Hall of Fame quarterback. And I mean, he's shown us games where he can be. In fact, he last week showed us halves where he can be, right? But the problem is there's a lot of yin and yang to him, and I need a little bit more consistency from him. He had like 2 or 3 deep shots to Marvin Jones Jr. in the back of the end zone. Who look, Marvin Jones Jr. He's a 6'3", 6'4" jump ball guy, but he's like 32, and he's like an average. In his prime, he was like an average number 2 guy. He's not prime Julio Jones. He's not prime Calvin Ridley, and he's Calvin Johnson, and he's throwing on these jump balls like he can go up and get them consistently, and he just can't. And I don't know, man. I saw 2 or 3 really poor decisions from him that I wasn't impressed with. One of them did lead to a turnover, but I need to see a little bit more confidence, or not a little bit more confidence. I need to see a little bit more consistency from him week over week if he is who we all thought he was, myself included, coming out of college.
So I got to push back because Trevor Lawrence is my boy, and
Sure is.
I will fight for that dude every chance I get. And he's had some games where I haven't had to, but here's my thing with Trevor Lawrence. I think there's a couple of points to kind of argue your point with his consistency. So one, I look at him last year and what he looked like, and everyone was like, dude's bust, this is horrible. And who he is this year, and it's a completely, different player. Is he going through some growing pains? Absolutely. They're probably growing pains he should have gone through in his first year in the NFL, adjusting to the NFL speed, but Urban Meyer absolutely destroyed that first year. To me, that's a toss away. This might as well be his rookie year. And look, took his team to the playoffs. He won a playoff game. And, for me, the things that are huge for what the future of Trevor Lawrence looks like is twofold. One, and you brought it up, when you look at the talent around him, he's throwing these balls to guys that aren't Julio Jones. You're right. He's not. Christian Kirk is a dude. He's good. He's not
Number
elite,
2.
right? It's the same thing with these other guys. I mean, look, I'm impressed they made Evan Ingram learn how to catch a football again, because I was pretty sure
No
that
idea
he
how that
didn't
happened.
know how to do that. But apparently he can actually catch a football again. So, that's good news. But again, he's surrounded by a bunch of dudes. All right. None of these guys are superstars. Zay Jones was a nobody. I would have thrown that guy away. I definitely wouldn't have given the contracts they did. This guy dropped every third pass that was thrown to him. He's made some of these guys relevant, but this dude grew up being the best of the best, going to the best schools, playing with the best players. I mean, you forget he played with guys like T. Higgins in college, and now he's playing with these guys. So, yeah, I think there's a little bit of an adjustment to the talent levels around him. And you know who comes back next year? Calvin Ridley. So I think that that's going to make a difference. I think Calvin Ridley went to Clemson. I'm pretty sure he might have. Did he? Oh, you're right. He was an Alabama guy. I'm thinking of D-Hop. So, but he's got an elite wide receiver coming back to him next year, which I think is going to help this team jump up in the future. And I think the second part is just it's a growing thing for Trevor Lawrence with some of these, this adversity. I mean, people forget this guy never lost a regular season game in high school. He never lost a regular season game in college. He lost one game in the college playoff. I mean, like this kid's all he's done is win. He's only been surrounded by the best talent his entire life. He hasn't had to face the talent level and the adversity. And so for me, when I see him bounce back like he did last week and things like that, then I go, hey, this guy's growing. He can be the guy he is because he has all the tools. I watch him make the plays. I watch him come back from behind. He can do it. He's got to grow through a few more of these pains, but he can do it. And I get the idea, like, hey, that ball he threw that got picked, maybe he shouldn't have thrown it, but that guy gets 30 seconds long, not 30 seconds. He gets half a second longer in the pocket, and that ball's money. They had that guy beat. It was a ridiculous one-handed pick. And if even with the throw that was thrown, if that guy doesn't go up and make a one-handed pick, he's taking that ball for 20 or 30 yards. And you know whose fault that is? It's not Trevor Lawrence's. And it was a great play, but they didn't block a guy who was clearly blitzing, and nobody even chipped him. So I'm not going to put that on him. He put the ball where it needed to be, and a guy made a ridiculous play on it. So half second longer, Zay's got an extra half step on him, then there's no question on it. But with the timing he had to put the ball where he did, if he doesn't make that ridiculous one-handed jumping catch, like the ball gets tipped, it's an incomplete pass, or Zay's the only one who has a shot at it. So I'm not going to give him as much fault on that one as some of the decisions he made the week before. So,
The only thing that
um,
I'll add to that really quickly is, during these runs where he looks great, he still has those same weapons as when he looks terrible. So, like I said, I just need the consistency. That's really all I need from him because, we know that he has the potential to do it. I just need it on a more consistent basis.
for sure, it's the Jags. We'll see if that ever happens. I don't think they know what the word consistency is.
Absolutely.
I think the game was a lot closer just because of the injury to Mahomes. Without that, I think the Chiefs would easily run away with this game. So, but 2027, they still get to win, and that's really what's important at the end of the day. Next game, one I think we'll spend a little bit of time on. Giants 7, Eagles 38. This was a slaughtering from the first kickoff, the first drive. Um, you know, by the second drive, they went up 14-0. The third time they get the ball back, they're driving. This game's over. I say they didn't even score the third touchdown. This game's over. You go up 21-0. The Giants just don't have the tools to push back, and you eliminate Saquon doing what Saquon has to do when you're up 3 scores. And I get it. You were afraid. There were other people who were talking the same thing. You're not the only person out there who was saying, hey, the Giants in this momentum and look out, and the Eagles, they're slowed down. Maybe that, you know what that is? That's recency bias. Everybody was
100%.
looking at the last 4 weeks and saying, hey, the Eagles, they've really struggled these last few weeks. They lost some games. And then they looked at the Giants. Oh, look at this momentum. That doesn't mean anything. All right. It's talent. All right. The Giants didn't have it. The Eagles did. They're a better football team. It's not close on paper, and it wasn't close on the field. And the Eagles showed us, hey, look, we are the team that we thought we were all year. You guys forgot, but we're still here.
Yeah, no, that's true. And for me, the big thing that I was just nervous about was all the injuries and Jalen, man. But he bounced back. He looked great, I thought. And what's interesting is the stat lines. I didn't realize how relatively average his stat line was at the end of the day. He only had 154 passing and 34 on the ground, but he had 3 touchdowns total. 2 passing and 1 running. And so those are the MVP type games that we were expecting from him the last couple of weeks. Obviously, he was injured, and so he wasn't able to do it. But it's the first MVP caliber type game that we've seen from him since like week 15-ish. The week before Chicago, it was actually against the Giants was the last time that he had a great game through and through.
Smoked them there too.
Absolutely smoked them there too. And so, I mean, look, like I said, had I known this team was going to be as healthy as they were, and these injuries weren't going to be a problem, I would have had no confidence issues whatsoever. But it was the injuries that were making me nervous. Josh Sweat, he came back off that brutal neck injury. He forced a sack and a half and had 2 pressures. Daniel Jones was just under pressure all night long from everybody. He barely completed 50% of his passes, and he didn't do much on the ground. He had no touchdowns. He had that interception. He just didn't look good. And so, Richie James was their number 1 receiver that day.
Exactly.
He had a massive drop that could have been a touchdown. That I don't think even would have changed the game. And at no point was this game close. And you were texting me through it, man. You were like, "Are you still nervous?" I was like, "Yes, I am." But that's who I am. That's what I do. It is what it is. I'm glad I was wrong.
It's it's funny. It just shows, when you look at that stat line for Jalen Hurts, it's nothing eye popping, right? But I think that just goes to show how complete this Eagles team is.
Yeah.
When you take a complete team that the Eagles have and you put it with a team like the Giants, who Richie James and 1 wide receiver. This is a dude who was a practice squad, sit on his couch kind of a guy. That's your leading wide receiver. I mean, it just shows that you just don't have it. The Eagles have 2 first-round guys, on their wide receiving court. You got guys that were, on their couch playing Madden. And I mean, you just don't have what it takes. I think the Eagles definitely have some things they can grow on. I think it'll be another couple years before they're really a threat to anybody. But Duvall's a great coach. He got the Giants definitely farther than I thought he would. But at the end of the day, when you get this deep in the playoffs, you're playing the real boys, and the big dogs, and they were outclassed and outmanned. So
yeah, I also want to give a quick shout out to Kenny G, or my boy Kenny G. First 100-yard rushing game for him in his career, and he did it in the playoffs. So let's go, Kenny G.
Hey, goodbye, Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we'll see. He's probably going, but I don't know if Kenny G is going to be the guy replacing him.
So that was a Saturday game. After the Saturday games ended, going into Sunday, I looked at it and I said, all right, the 6 best teams in the NFL are the 6 teams remaining. There was no team that kind of snuck through or upset anybody that were like, hey, this isn't the best team. They beat a better team and they're here. I mean, these were the 6 best teams. So, Sunday games were the better games, based on who the teams were going to be that were playing. Um, and, some of them shockingly weren't nearly as close as I thought they were going to be. We get, we get the Bengals and the Bills, and 27-10. The Bengals owned this game. They were playing in the snow. The weather was there. Made little to no difference to Joe Cool, just out there doing what he does every single week. Making comments at the end. I don't know if you heard his quote, but it was great. The reporter at the end of the game asked him, how he felt that there were a bunch of Bills fans buying tickets to the neutral site in Atlanta for the Chiefs Bills
Give him
games,
refund.
and he get your refunds. All right, hope you got refunds. Um, this game to me, and we'll get into your details on the game, but to me, the storyline of this game is one thing. The Bengals are a really good team. Joe Burrow is a fantastic quarterback. Josh Allen is a very good quarterback. That being said, the Bills' identity is Josh Allen. And if Josh Allen has any type of a struggle or he needs any kind of a help, it's just not there. And
Nope.
it's not a talent thing. They have talent on the team, I feel like they just don't have an identity, and they just don't, they rely on Josh Allen superhero to get it done for him. And if he can't find a way to make it happen, this team is flat. And I think that these kind of runs in the playoffs we've seen the last couple of years after this game, this is who the Bills are going to be until they figure something out. They're going to be a really, really good team. They're going to be favored every year. They're going to get to this spot in the playoffs. They're just going to fall flat because, if Josh Allen isn't perfect, they can't compete with a real good team.
Yeah, to me that sounds a lot like what Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers have been the last 10 years or so, or however many years it's been for them. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's the identity of the team. You mentioned it. It is Josh Allen. They do have an identity. It's Josh Allen. Be Superman. Figure it out. And if he's not perfect, they're not going to win those games. That O-line is mediocre at best. And I'm being nice there, right? I think they're probably somewhere in the 24th, 26th best, line in the league. And it's not great because they have 2 running backs on that team that could play. They have Devin Singletary and they have James Cook, who they drafted in the 2nd round. And I
Breeda's
don't know
there
if
too. He's not a bad back. I mean, they
no, he's
have
not.
people there.
They sure do. And I don't know if you've heard of James Cook's brother, Dalvin Cook, but he's pretty good. So I think it runs in the family that he's probably a pretty good back. And we've seen James in the second half of the season, he was able to pop off for a handful of games and really be productive. But man, that it's just not consistent with them either. That line just is not good. They need, for me and my money, if I'm the Bills and I really want to make that playoff run, I'm really looking at that O line. I think they need to probably replace 2 to 3, maybe 4 guys on that O line, make it competent. We saw the Bengals try to do that from last year to this year because the Bengals said, "Hey, we want to be true contenders." So what we're going to do is instead of get Joe Burrow sacked 9 times in one game against the Titans, we're going to go out and we're going to try to fix that O line. Now the results have been a little bit mixed on that, but at least they tried. And I don't know what the Bills are going to try to do in this offseason because they're over on the cap for next year, it sounds like. They have a lot of free agents that are going to end up leaving. And it sounds like Stephon Diggs isn't super happy at the moment. I mean, I know he's kind of come out and sort of walked some of it back, kind of saying, "Oh, I'm just competitive." And that's really what he was kind of blaming it on. But I don't know. I don't know if that's going to bear too well for team morale. And look, Joe Cool, he's the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL right now. I don't think he's going to finishing 2nd in MVP voting. But for me, you can throw all the superlatives, all the flowers you want at him. Joe Burrow is, to me, clearly at worst the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, the guy's just, all he's done is win since he can't come to Cincinnati. People for a while were talking about, coming out of that draft, he shouldn't go to Cincinnati. He should reject them and force his way to insert team. And to his credit, he said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go there. I'm going to turn this franchise around. And guess what? The Super Bowl window is as long as my career is." And he is darn right about that.
He coming home. He grew up a Bengals fan, grew up right outside there, so it's a good place for him to be home. We'll see how the Diggs thing unfolds. It's interesting. Part of me goes, "Hey, look, he's a competitive player. We watched him stand out there and watch confetti fall when they lost last year, and use that as motivation." But hey, look, we also saw Stephon Diggs that forced his way out of Minnesota because he didn't like how things were going. So who knows what's going to happen with Stephon Diggs and that attitude of his? We'll see. But again, it's an identity thing. This team's got to figure out who they want to be and how they want to run it, and stop just running plays and relying on Josh Allen, and actually put a team identity in place.
Yeah.
All right. I know we're going to spend a lot of time on this game, but let's just jump into it. Cowboys, Niners, 19-12. 49ers get the win. I had a couple of points on this game. I think I'll touch on my first one. We'll kind of see what you got think, and I'm going to touch on kind of my last few points. When I looked at this game, 12-19, a lot of people were disappointed. This game's really boring. Oh, this is so low scoring. These offenses are garbage. Here's the reality. It's nothing to do with either of these teams' offenses. This has everything to do with how good these defenses are. And they are maybe the top two defenses in the entire NFL. And they came to play. The Niners have possibly the deepest defense in the entire league. They can rotate guys, and you still got first-round guys out there playing. They're ridiculous, and then they proved it. And on the Cowboys side of the ball, Dan Quinn had his guys moving. I mean, that team was fast. They were keeping up. And that's not an easy thing to do with some of these guys on the 49ers side of the ball. And if you like defensive football, you would have loved this game. If you wanted high-flying offense, go somewhere else, because that's not going to happen when these defenses are on the field. I know you were psyched to see the Cowboys lose, so let's hear it out. What'd you think?
I was as psyched as it could be. I mean, on two accounts, Eagles winning and Cowboys losing. I don't know if it gets any better than that. But yeah, I mean, I thought this game was definitely interesting for sure. It was definitely a defensive battle, but I disagree with anybody that thought that it wasn't entertaining. I mean, I thought it had a lot of entertainment factor going on for it. I couldn't turn away from it. I thought one of the interesting storylines was Brock Purdy looked relatively pedestrian. I mean, 214 yards, no touchdowns. It's, kind of game managery. It's not what we've really kind of come to expect of him over the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks or however long it's been. And so maybe that's not fair to put that on him, but it was his most pedestrian game to date. And it helps when the Cowboys offense was able to stymie that genius offensive mind of Kyle Shanahan to 3.5 yards per carry. And then they were also able to pressure him all night long. They got a couple of sacks on him. I think they had 4 QB pressures on him. So, that looks like that's going to be a relatively decent way to try to stumble the 49ers to get pressure on him. But I think that's a lot easier said than done.
Pedestrian, right? I
Yeah.
agree to the extent that his numbers weren't, lighting up the stat sheet or anything.
Yeah.
But again, the Cowboys have a top defense. Nobody is lighting up the Cowboys, right? Nope. I didn't expect him to have a huge game. But you know what I did see from Brock Purdy? I watched a guy who was superposed in the pocket. All right, he was calm, he was collected. Look, is he the most athletic dude in the world? No. But you know what he has? He has poise. And with this roster around him, that's what you need. I watched him make a play where things kind of broke down. He scrambled around, and he made a decision to huck this ball out of bounds, and he burned a ton of clock. And I'm looking at him going, that is a veteran play that 90% of players in their first, second, and third year are not making.
No.
And that kind of poise, I don't need a guy to go out there and put up huge stat lines. I don't know. Look, I come from a run first, play defense my entire life. That's how Denver's played. All right, we're going to beat you up. We're going to run the ball. We're going to burn the clock. And that's how we're going to beat you. All right, I didn't come from high-flying offenses. They're fun to watch, but I want a guy who's going to go out there, not make mistakes, be poised in the pocket, take the pressure, and, let my defense do the work. We're going to beat you up because we're bigger and stronger than you, and that's how we're going to win. So I was super impressed with his game, even if his stat line wasn't, he played an amazing game.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think amazing is probably a step too high for me. I think he played like a middle of the pack game. I thought he was fine. He did what he needed to do to get the win. And honestly, that's all you should be able to do is ask of your third stringer, 7th round, last pick of the draft quarterback. So trust me, he has met and surpassed all expectations I had of him. It's just the first game where I didn't think he lit it up. But man, let's get to the Cowboy side of this. I mean, look, man, I'm thrilled. I am so happy about all of this. What's interesting to me is the dichotomy between Eagles fans and Cowboys fans. Look, everybody knows Eagles fans. We're loud, we're rowdy, we're rude, we're a hostile group of people, right? It's who we are.
This is true.
The Cowboys, though, oh my God, the Cowboys fans, they're something else, man. They're obnoxious. Every single year, they claim it's their year. Every single year, the owner talks about how this team reminds me of the 90s Cowboys. This year's going to be different. Stop it. It's been over 25 years since you guys have won anything and of relevance. But every year you talk about it like you guys are the best team out there. It's crazy to me. Do you know how many owners there are in the league that people don't know their names of? But every casual football fan knows Jerry Jones. Everyone knows Gerald Wayne Jones Jr. as the owner of the Cowboys franchise. And what he's done is he's made it into like a soap opera of a team. He's made it Hollywood. He's made it very rambunctious and just all the lights and glamour, and everybody's constantly watching them, but they don't do anything. It's crazy to me. Your best players on the team are formerly your left tackle, who's a future Hall of Famer, your right guard, and one of your linebackers, and Micah Parsons. Those are three guys that are either Hall of Famers or having Hall of Fame trajectory type, careers. But I mean, look, Dak Prescott
Average.
is average. CeeDee Lamb, he's an average number one. He's probably the 12th, 14th best receiver in the league. He's an average number one. Trayvon Diggs, he's
Overrated.
yeah, he's fine. He's definitely overrated. People talk about him like he's elite. Zeke, he's washed up. He's old. His contract is very much expiring on them. And you would just think that they have the talent level of the 49ers, and they don't. They need to take a hard look in the mirror, and Jerry needs to, take a look in the mirror, especially, and say, I am not the end all be all of this team, right? This team is about winning, and we need to give it to the competent people that are going to end up helping us win this. And he doesn't seem interested in it, and I love it. I would love for it to keep going.
I mean, look, we all know that Jerry's not going to do that. We know that he's going to be the end all be all of the Cowboys for until he drops dead, and that's the only thing that's going to stop Jerry from being Jerry. Look, Dak's average. Everybody thought he was a second coming, but he's not. He's average. Shockingly, he has the same exact postseason statistics as Tony Romo. Same dude.
Crazy.
You guys didn't upgrade. You got the same guy. All right. Losing Pollard was rough on him, but at the end of the day, this team is where it is today because of their defense and not because of Dak Prescott in this offense. And guess what? Dan Quinn is probably getting a head coaching job. He's going to be gone, and I don't care who you replace him with. They're not going to put the same defense on the field, even with these same players. So I think the Cowboys are in for a rude awakening next year, and they're not going to be as good as they think they are every year. But next year, I think it's definitely going to show, a lot more with how that's all going to break down. So, looking at the Niners, when we're talking about offense, that's what everybody talks about. They talk about, oh, the Niners defense, it's a slow game. Their offense isn't great. Brock Purdy, blah, blah, blah. This defense is a little slow. You mentioned Michael Parsons, but Dan Quinn did a great job moving this dude. He went from edge rusher to middle linebacker, back to the edge. And then they got beat up, so they put him back in the middle. And he did that to try and slow this team down. So this team lost some games early. They're still figuring things out. Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't count the Bears' loss in the rain that day. I don't know how they lost to the Broncos. Jimmy G's first game back as a starter. He didn't have a playbook the entire offseason because he wasn't supposed to be with the team. Whatever, we'll write those off. They got smoked by the Chiefs, and that was their fourth loss. They were 3-4, and since they got smoked by the Chiefs, this team has come out. They were 11-0.
Yep.
Check out some of these numbers. Their point differential plus 179. That's an average of 16.3 points more than their opponent every one of those games. 8 of those 11 games, they won by double digits. They had 23 takeaways in that time. This team is explosive. They can put up big points. Don't think they're just a defense, because this team can score on you, and they are explosive. And it's just backed up by their defense. They can beat you hard. They can beat you fast. It really doesn't matter. They can beat you everywhere that they want to.
Agreed.
You got any other thoughts on any of these games this weekend?
That's mostly what I had to touch up on this weekend. I think the only other thing that I'm a little, nervous about going into this week is, is the hype gonna, be lived up to in these games that we have coming up? Because I think the Niners-Eagles game is going to be really good, and I think the Bengals-Chiefs team on paper should be phenomenal. It's just going to be contingent on Patrick Mahomes being healthy.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, join us part two for the breakdown of the conference championships.